Imagine a corner of New York where the rhythm of life slows to the pace of rustling leaves and distant bird calls, where houses rest on generous parcels of land, not as luxury estates, but as humble, attainable shelters waiting for new stewards. While much of the nation grapples with housing costs that spiral beyond reach, these quiet towns offer an alternative reality, one where a farmhouse with multiple bedrooms might cost less than a gently used automobile, where acres of open land stretch behind a weathered porch, and where the only traffic you'll encounter on an evening drive might be a dear family crossing the road with unhurried grace. These places exist not as marketing fantasies, but as genuine communities shaped by history, geography, and the slow ebb of population that has left behind spacious homes and fertile ground for those willing to listen to what the land offers. In the northern reaches of the state, near the foothills where mountains begin their gentle ascent toward the Canadian border, you might find a sturdy farmhouse with room enough for a large family or a collection of creative pursuits. Its kitchen welcomes you with cabinetry of rich maple, its surfaces worn smooth by years of morning coffee preparations and evening meal gatherings. Upstairs, bedrooms open onto spaces where sunlight filters through mature trees, and a primary suite features a soaking tub tucked into a corner, a small indulgence that feels profound when your nearest neighbor is a quarter-mile away. Beyond the back door, a secondary garage stands ready for projects both practical and whimsical, while a modest barn with hand-hewn beams invites dreams of chickens clucking at dawn or goats nibbling at fence posts. A river murmurs nearby, offering summer afternoons of fishing or quiet contemplation, though its springtime swell reminds residents that nature's beauty carries responsibilities. Checking flood maps becomes as routine as checking the weather forecast. This is not a place for those who require constant stimulation. It is for souls who find richness in silence, who measure wealth not in square footage alone, but in star-filled nights and the freedom to walk your own land without encountering a single fence line. Further west, in the rolling countryside of Allegheny County, another property unfolds with a different kind of promise. Here, a farmhouse is amid more than 10 acres of open field and wooded edge, its wraparound deck embracing the landscape like an open arm. A treehouse dangles from an old oak at the property's edge, already whispering stories to children who have yet to arrive. But the true heart of this place lies in its outbuildings, a workshop of impressive scale where electricity hums through outlets waiting for tools to awaken, where one bay features a concrete floor perfect for automotive tinkering, and another retains an earthen surface ideal for projects that embrace the rawness of creation. A traditional barn with multiple stalls stands ready for horses or other livestock, while a converted silo rises unexpectedly nearby, its circular rooms offering a sanctuary that feels both ancient and inventive. What makes this location particularly compelling is its proximity to a small university town, where seasonal energy arrives with students each autumn, bringing cafes to life and campus events that punctuate the rural quiet with bursts of youthful vitality. Yet step off the main road, and you return to a world where snow falls in thick blankets during winter months, where shopping requires a short drive to a neighboring village, and where the concept of nightlife dissolves into the simple pleasure of a well-stoked fire and a book chosen from your own shelves. Some properties present themselves not as retreats, but as opportunities. Duplexes already inhabited by reliable tenants whose monthly payments could cover a mortgage from the moment of closing. In villages where community bonds remain strong despite economic shifts, these two-family homes stand as testaments to practical living. One unit might welcome you home after a day's work, while the other generates steady income, or both could serve as rental assets for an investor seeking tangible returns in an age of digital abstractions. These are not glamorous properties featured in design magazines. They are functional, unpretentious structures with fresh paint and efficient windows, located within walking distance of main streets, where locally owned shops still thrive, and neighbors exchange greetings without irony. The trade-off for such affordability is clear. You become a steward of someone else's home, answering midnight calls about dripping faucets or malfunctioning heaters. Yet for those who view property not merely as shelter, but as a foundation for financial resilience, these modest duplexes represent a rare alignment of low entry cost and immediate utility. Other farmhouses whisper a transformation rather than turnkey convenience. Their siding may show the silvering effects of decades of sun and rain. Their roofs may sag with the weight of accumulated winters, and their interiors may await the touch of skilled hands to restore warmth to cold floors and light to shadowed rooms. Yet beneath these surface challenges often lie solid bones. Foundations poured with care generations ago, floor plans that honor practical living, and land that has never known the scrape of bulldozers or the grit of suburban development. To purchase such a property is to accept a partnership with time itself, to trade immediate comfort for profound satisfaction of shaping a home with your own vision. The rewards extend beyond aesthetics. 4 acres of open field might become a market garden, a wooded parcel might yield firewood for winters, and neglected bar might transform into a studio where creativity finds room to breathe. These homes ask for commitment, for patience during months of dust and disruption, but they often return something increasingly scarce, a canvas upon which to paint not just a dwelling, but a way of life. The communities surrounding these properties possess characters as distinct as the landscapes they inhabit. Some villages pulse with seasonal tourism, their streets filling each summer with visitors drawn to nearby lakes or historic sites. Their economies adapting to the rhythm of vacationers while maintaining a core of year-round residents who remember every flood and every harvest. Other towns exist in quieter orbits, their populations aging gracefully, their main streets lined with buildings that have housed the same family businesses for half a century. In these places, anonymity is impossible. The cashier at the grocery store will learn your name within weeks, your preferences for bread or milk noted without prompting. This intimacy can feel suffocating to those accustomed to urban anonymity, yet for others it becomes the very fabric of belonging, a safety net woven from shared history and mutual regard. Schools may be small but deeply invested in their students. Hospitals may require drive but stand ready when needed. And cultural life may manifest not in concert halls, but in annual festivals where the entire town gathers to celebrate harvest, history, or the simple joy of community. Winters here are not mere seasons, but presences, long, deep, and transformative. Snow does not dust a landscape lightly. It settles in for months, reshaping fields into rolling white expanses, and turning driveways into projects requiring strategy and strength. Those unprepared for this reality may find their spirits tested by February's gray light, but those who embrace it discover a different kind of beauty. The crystalline silence after a heavy snowfall, the way wood smoke curls against a violet twilight sky, the camaraderie of neighbors helping one another dig out after a storm. These challenges are not hidden from prospective buyers. They are the very conditions that create the affordability. The market has already priced in the reality of shoveling driveways and insulating pipes, leaving room for those who see not burden but rhythm in nature cycles. What emerges from exploring these forgotten corners of New York is not a simple real estate opportunity, but an invitation to reconsider what home might mean. It is an invitation to trade convenience for character, density for depth, and the certainty of urban amenities for the unpredictable gifts of rural life. Wild turkeys strutting across your lawn at dawn, the taste of vegetables grown in your own soil, the profound quiet that allows thoughts to settle like sediment in still water. These properties are not for everyone, nor should they be. They demand resilience, self-reliance, and a tolerance for imperfection. But for those who feel the pull of open land, who dream not of square footage alone but of space to breathe and grow, these farmhouses represent something increasingly rare. A chance to own not just a structure, but a piece of possibility. What might life truly feel like in these quiet towns where homes cost less than city parking spaces? How do residents navigate the balance between isolation and community? What hidden strengths do these communities possess that outsiders might overlook? These questions deserve thoughtful exploration beyond mere price tags and square footage. What does daily life actually feel like for residents who choose these affordable rural properties over urban convenience?
Daily life in these rural enclaves unfolds at a tempo dictated not by traffic lights or digital notifications, but by natural rhythms and human-scale interactions. Mornings often begin not with the blare of an alarm clock, but with the soft gray light of dawn filtering through trees, perhaps accompanied by the distant call of a rooster from a neighboring property or the rustle of deer moving through the edge of the woods. The ritual of making coffee might be followed not by a crowded commute, but by a walk across one's own land to check on garden beds or simply to feel the dew beneath bare feet. Errands become intentional outings rather than fragmented tasks squeezed between meetings. A single weekly trip to a nearby town might encompass groceries, hardware store visits, and a leisurely lunch at a diner where the waitress remembers your usual order. Evenings tend to draw families inward, toward porches during warm months or fireplaces when temperatures drop, with entertainment found in books, board games, or conversations uninterrupted by the glow of multiple screens. Social life exists not in curated events but in organic connections, the impromptu conversation with a neighbor while collecting mail, the shared effort of helping a nearby farmer bring in hay before a storm, the town-wide gathering for a harvest festival where generations mingle without self-consciousness. This lifestyle demands self-sufficiency. When a pipe freezes or a fence post rots, solutions come not from calling a service but from problem-solving with available tools and perhaps a borrowed piece of equipment from someone down the road. Yet this very necessity cultivates a different kind of confidence, the quiet pride of maintaining one's own domain, of knowing the names of trees on your property and the patterns of wildlife that share it. The absence of constant stimulation initially feels like loss to some, but over time transforms into a gift. The capacity for stillness, for reflection, for noticing how light shifts across a field throughout the day or how the sound of rain differs when falling on metal roofing versus forest canopy. This is not a life of deprivation but of recalibration, a conscious choice to value depth of experience over breadth of options, to find richness in relationships with place and people rather than in the endless consumption of experiences marketed by urban centers. How do these communities maintain vitality despite population decline and limited economic opportunities? These communities sustain themselves through a resilient blend of adaptation, intergenerational continuity, and creative reimagining of traditional assets. While it is true that many young adults depart for education or employment in larger cities, a steady counterflow exists of individuals and families seeking refuge from urban pressures, remote workers lured by high-speed internet now reaching rural corridors, retirees drawn by affordability and natural beauty, and creative professionals who discover that isolation can fuel rather than stifle artistic production. Local economies have evolved beyond their original industrial or agricultural foundations to embrace hybrid models. A former dairy farm might now host seasonal weddings and a small-scale maple syrup operation. A shuttered factory building could transform into studios for potters and woodworkers who sell their wares both locally and through online marketplaces. Crucially, these towns often possess infrastructure that newcomers overlook. Solid school systems that attract young families despite modest tax bases, volunteer fire departments that function as social hubs as much as emergency services, and libraries that serve as community centers offering everything from children's story hours to technology training for seniors. Annual events become economic and social anchors, the county fair that draws visitors from 3 states, the trout derby that fills motel rooms and restaurant tables each spring, the arts festival where local musicians and painters gain audiences they might never find in saturated urban markets. Perhaps most significantly, these communities maintain vitality through what might be called practical interdependence. The recognition that survival in a place with limited services requires mutual support. When winter storms knock out power, neighbors check on elders without prompting. When a family faces medical hardship, community fundraisers materialize with quiet efficiency. When a local business struggles, residents make conscious choices to shop locally despite the convenience of big box stores 20 miles away. This is not nostalgia but necessity refined into culture. A social fabric woven from shared challenges that creates bonds stronger than those formed through casual proximity alone. The towns may appear static to passing observers, but beneath the surface they engage in constant, quiet negotiation between preservation and progress, honoring what made them viable while adapting to new realities in ways that preserve their essential character. What hidden challenges should potential buyers honestly prepare for beyond the obvious isolation and winter weather? Beyond the romanticized notions of rural living lies a landscape of practical complexities that demand both foresight and flexibility. The most underestimated challenge often proves to be infrastructure reliability, not merely the presence of utilities but their resilience and the response time when failures occur. A water well that served a family for decades might suddenly develop contamination requiring expensive remediation. A septic system functioning adequately for years could fail during a period of heavy rainfall, necessitating replacement at costs that rival urban property taxes for multiple years. Internet service, while increasingly available through satellite or fixed wireless, may remain vulnerable to weather disruptions or bandwidth limitations that frustrate remote workers accustomed to urban fiber optics. Road maintenance presents another subtle challenge. While primary routes receive prompt attention after snowstorms, the gravel or dirt roads serving many rural properties may remain unplowed for days, requiring owners to invest in snowblowers or four-wheel drive vehicles and to develop contingency plans for medical emergencies or essential work commitments during severe weather. Wildlife interactions extend beyond charming deer sightings to more complex negotiations. Black bears drawn to unsecured trash cans, coyotes that may threaten small pets, mice and other rodents seeking winter shelter within wall cavities, each requiring proactive management rather than passive coexistence. The psychological dimension of rural living also warrants honest consideration. The initial euphoria of space and silence often gives way, after several months, to a period of adjustment where the absence of spontaneous social interaction reveals itself not as peaceful solitude but as genuine loneliness for those unprepared. This transition period tests resilience, demanding intentional effort to build community connections rather than waiting for them to form organically as they might in denser environments. Property maintenance itself operates on a different scale and timeline than urban homeowners anticipate. Roofs require attention before leaks manifest, drainage systems must be cleared before spring runoff, wood piles need preparation before the first frost, creating a cyclical rhythm of labor that never truly concludes but merely shifts with seasons. Perhaps most profoundly, rural living demands comfort with self-reliance in moments of crisis. The ability to assess whether a situation requires immediate professional intervention or can be managed with available tools and knowledge, the willingness to drive significant distances for specialized medical care or automotive repairs, and the emotional capacity to sit with problems that cannot be solved with a phone call or same-day delivery. These challenges do not render rural living undesirable. They simply require a different contract between resident and place, one based not on convenience but on reciprocity, where the land offers space and beauty in exchange for stewardship and adaptability. How might someone without construction experience realistically approach renovating a property requiring significant work? Approaching a renovation project without prior construction experience demands a strategic blend of humility, research, and relationship building rather than attempting to master every skill independently. The most successful novice renovators begin not with hammers and saws but with careful assessment and documentation. Spending weeks living with the property's current state if possible, photographing every corner in different lighting conditions, noting patterns of moisture or drafts, and consulting multiple independent inspectors whose expertise extends beyond standard home evaluations to include structural engineers or specialists in older building techniques. This diagnostic phase proves invaluable in distinguishing between cosmetic updates that can wait and foundational issues demanding immediate attention. Next comes the cultivation of local knowledge, identifying not merely contractors but craftspeople embedded in the community who understand regional building traditions, from proper techniques for repairing century-old timber frames to methods for insulating stone foundations without trapping moisture. These individuals often prove more valuable than nationally franchised renovation companies because they grasp how local climate interacts with building materials across seasons. Financial planning requires particular creativity. Rather than viewing renovation as a single overwhelming project, experienced rural homeowners approach it as a phased evolution, identifying which spaces must function immediately upon move-in and which can remain unfinished for months or years while savings accumulate. This might mean fully renovating a single bathroom and kitchen while leaving other rooms in camping condition, with minimal heat and lighting until resources allow for proper restoration. Learning occurs through deliberate apprenticeship, offering to assist skilled tradespeople in exchange for instruction on tasks within safe boundaries, attending workshops offered by agricultural extension offices on topics like chainsaw safety or basic electrical work, and joining online communities specific to renovating older rural properties where members share hard-won lessons about everything from sourcing reclaimed materials to navigating county permit processes. Crucially, successful renovators develop comfort with imperfection, the understanding that a home restored over years with evolving skills carries more character and personal meaning than one flipped rapidly by professionals. They learn to celebrate incremental progress, the satisfaction of successfully patching plaster walls even if the texture doesn't perfectly match surrounding areas, the pride in installing kitchen cabinets that function beautifully even if alignment requires a forgiving eye. This approach transforms renovation from a stressful race toward completion into a gradual conversation with a property, where each season brings new understanding of how light moves through rooms or how wind patterns affect which windows draft most severely. The journey demands patience and tolerance for living amidst dust and disruption, but it also cultivates a profound connection to place. The knowledge that your hands have participated in a home's renewal creates a bond no purchased perfection could replicate. What unexpected joys do residents consistently discover after making the transition to these rural properties? Residents who successfully adapt to rural living frequently describe a cascade of subtle joys that accumulate gradually rather than arriving as dramatic revelations. Many speak of rediscovering their senses in ways urban environments had numbed, the ability to distinguish bird species by song alone after months of attentive listening, the satisfaction of recognizing approaching weather not by checking an app but by observing cloud formations or shifts in wind direction, the pleasure of tasting vegetables harvested hours before eating when their flavor carries the essence of specific soil and sunlight. The rhythm of seasons becomes not an abstraction but a lived experience. The particular quality of light in October when the sun angles low through fiery maples, the profound silence of a snow-covered landscape absorbing all sound, the explosion of spring peepers in vernal pools signaling winter's end with biological certainty. Social connections often deepen in unexpected ways, not through frequent interactions but through their authenticity and substance. A conversation with a neighbor while repairing a shared fence line might span philosophy and practical advice in equal measure, unburdened by social performance. Children raised in these environments frequently develop a comfortable relationship with both solitude and self-directed play, constructing elaborate worlds in woods or fields without digital mediation. Many residents describe a recalibration of time perception itself. Tasks that once felt urgent lose their edge when measured against the slow growth of an orchard or the patient work of splitting firewood for next winter. There emerges a particular satisfaction in solving problems with available resources rather than purchased solutions. Fashioning a tool repair from spare parts, improvising a drainage solution using stones gathered on the property, learning to preserve harvests through canning or freezing not as hobby but as meaningful participation in cycles of abundance and scarcity. Perhaps most profoundly, residents often discover a renewed relationship with their own capabilities. The confidence that comes from successfully navigating a winter storm without external assistance, the pride in serving guests food grown on one's own land, the quiet contentment of watching wildlife return to areas where habitat has been thoughtfully restored. These joys resist commodification. They cannot be purchased or rushed into existence but emerge only through sustained presence and attention. They represent not an escape from modernity but a reintegration with fundamental human experiences. Working with one's hands, marking time through natural cycles, participating in community through mutual aid rather than transaction. For those who remain open to them, these subtle rewards gradually reshape not merely where one lives but how one moves through the world, with greater patience, deeper attention, and a quiet confidence born of knowing one can meet life's challenges with resourcefulness rather than reliance on systems beyond personal influence. What does it truly mean to own a home in an age when shelter has become both commodity and burden, when the dream of property ownership feels increasingly distant for so many yet remains stubbornly within reach in forgotten places that the mainstream has overlooked? Ownership here is not merely a transaction recorded in county ledgers. It is a covenant with land and legacy, an agreement to care for structures that have sheltered generations before you and may shelter others long after your time has passed. It means accepting responsibility not only for walls and roofs but for the continuity of place itself, the preservation of open fields against encroaching development, the stewardship of woodlands that filter water and shelter wildlife, the maintenance of pathways that connect neighbors in communities where interdependence remains necessity rather than choice. This form of ownership asks different questions than urban real estate. Not, how much can this appreciate? But, what can I nurture here? Not, what amenities surround me? But, what rhythms will I learn to live within? The answer reveals itself gradually through seasons. The satisfaction of harvesting vegetables planted months earlier, the quiet pride of clearing a driveway after a storm without waiting for municipal assistance, the deepening connection to a landscape that becomes familiar not through maps but through daily presence. True ownership in these places transforms from financial asset into relationship, a slow unfolding of mutual care between person and place that cannot be rushed, cannot be purchased ready-made, and cannot be fully understood until lived.
How do we reconcile the romantic allure of rural simplicity with the unvarnished reality of isolation, labor, and seasonal hardship that these properties demand? The reconciliation arrives not through denial of difficulty, but through redefinition of reward. The isolation that initially feels like deprivation gradually reveals itself as spaciousness, the room to think without interruption, to fail without audience, to grow without comparison to curated social media narratives. The labor that seems burdensome at first, splitting wood, clearing snow, repairing fences, transforms over time into rhythm rather than chore, a physical engagement with necessity that grounds a mind and body in tangible accomplishment. Seasonal hardship ceases to be obstacle and becomes teacher. Winter's long darkness cultivates interior resources of patience and creativity. Spring's mud and flood risks instill respect for natural forces beyond human control. Summer's abundance teaches preservation and gratitude. Autumn's preparation builds anticipation rather than anxiety. This is not the simplicity of ease, but the simplicity of clarity. A life where priorities sort themselves through necessity rather than marketing. Where what matters reveals itself through daily practice rather than abstract philosophy. The romantic vision shatters quickly upon arrival, yes, but what emerges from its fragments is something more durable. Not escape from complexity, but engagement with a different kind of complexity, one rooted in natural cycles and human interdependence rather than digital noise and economic abstraction. The hardship does not disappear. It simply transforms from enemy into companion. Its challenge is becoming the very texture that gives life depth and meaning. What might we be surrendering when we choose convenience over character, density over depth, the certainty of urban amenities over the uncertainty of rural possibility? We surrender the experience of self-reliance, not the rugged individualism of myth, but the quiet confidence that comes from solving problems with available resources rather than purchased services. We surrender the education of seasons, not as calendar markers, but as lived realities that shape daily decisions, dietary patterns, social rhythms, and emotional landscapes. We surrender the gift of scale, not merely physical space, but psychological room to make mistakes without permanent consequence, to experiment with livelihood without catastrophic risk, to raise children who understand food's origins and weather's power not through textbooks, but through direct experience. We surrender the texture of authentic community, not the curated connections of interest-based social groups, but the messy, enduring bonds forged through shared hardship and mutual aid, where help arrives not because it was requested, but because it was noticed, where your presence matters not for what you produce, but simply because you exist within the web of local life. Most profoundly, we surrender the opportunity to redefine success on terms not dictated by markets or metrics, to discover that wealth might reside not in accumulation, but in sufficiency, not in options, but in commitment, not in mobility, but in rootedness. These surrenders are not inherently wrong. Urban life offers its own irreplaceable gifts of diversity, spontaneity, and cultural richness. But the choice deserves conscious examination rather than default assumption. That convenience purchased through dependence may cost more than hardship embraced through agency. That density offering constant stimulation may starve the soul of stillness necessary for depth. That certainty of amenities may come at the price of resilience when systems falter. And finally, who are we becoming when we choose to put down roots in places the world has forgotten? When we accept the challenge of stewarding land and structure rather than consuming shelter as disposable commodity? We become participants rather than spectators in the cycles that sustain life, planting trees whose shade we may never sit under, repairing foundations that will outlast our occupancy, protecting watersheds that nourish communities downstream. We become translators between past and future, learning from elders who remember how these lands were worked and lived upon, while adapting ancient wisdom to contemporary realities of climate and connectivity. We become cultivators of slowness in an accelerated age, rediscovering how bread rises, how it seasons, how relationships deepen not through frequency of interaction, but through consistency of presence. We become witnesses to subtle transformations invisible to hurried eyes. The particular quality of light on a November afternoon, the return of specific bird species, signaling seasonal shifts, the gradual healing of land restored to thoughtful care after years of neglect. Most importantly, we become answer to a quiet question many carry without articulating. Is there another way to live? Not a perfect way, not an easy way, but a way that honors human scale, that respects natural limits, that values depth of experience over breadth of consumption. The farmhouse itself matters less than the intention it represents. The choice to build rather than browse, to commit rather than curate, to belong rather than visit. And in that choice lies not escape from modernity, but evolution beyond its limitations. A recognition that progress need not mean uniformity, that advancement need not require severance from land and community, that the future might hold space for those who choose to move gently upon the earth while building lives of quiet substance. The properties wait not as investments, but as invitations, to discover what we are capable when stripped of convenience, to learn who we become when given space to grow, to find home not as location, but as practice of care extended across generations of land and life.
What does it mean to find home not in what a place offers you, but in what you are willing to offer it? Home in these quiet corners of New York is not discovered through convenience or comfort alone, but through reciprocity, a mutual exchange between steward and landscape that unfolds slowly across seasons. It means arriving not as a consumer expecting amenities, but as a participant ready to learn the language of the land. How water moves across fields after heavy rain, which trees shelter the house from winter winds, when the soil is ready to receive seeds, when wildlife passes through not as intrusion but as reminder that you share this space with ancient rhythms. The farmhouse does not welcome you with perfection. It greets you with honesty. Peeling paint that speaks of decades of sun and storm, floors that slope gently with the weight of generations, windows that rattle when the wind rises from the north. And in that honesty lies an invitation to co-create rather than merely occupy. You offer your hands to repair what time has worn, your attention to notice subtle changes in light and season, your patience to wait for gardens to flourish and woodpiles to season. In return, the land offers something increasingly rare in our accelerated world, the gift of depth. Depth of silence that allows thoughts to settle without interruption. Depth of relationship forged not through curated social encounters but through shared labor with neighbors after storms. Depth of time measured not by productivity but by cycles of growth and rest. This is not ownership as possession but as belonging, a recognition that you do not own the land so much as you are permitted to care for it temporarily, leaving it slightly more whole than you found it for those who will follow. Home becomes not a destination reached but a practice cultivated daily through small acts of attention and care. Why do we continue to measure value in square footage and proximity to commerce when the soul often finds its richest nourishment in space, silence, and the slow unfolding of natural time? Our metrics of value have become dangerously narrow, shaped by markets that reduce dwelling to investment and community to convenience. We calculate worth through commute times and school rankings, through walkability scores and proximity to coffee shops, as if these quantifiable factors could capture the intangible qualities that actually sustain human spirit. Yet those who find their way to these forgotten farmhouses often report a quiet recalibration, not an immediate euphoria, but a gradual dawning that something essential had been missing from their previous lives. They discover that space itself possesses therapeutic properties. The ability to walk from house to woodlet without encountering a single boundary, to witness an entire day's light move across fields without obstruction, to hear one's own thoughts without the constant hum of traffic or digital notification. They learn that silence is not emptiness but fullness, a textured presence that allows inner noise to settle, that creates room for creativity to emerge not from stimulation but from stillness. They come to understand that natural time, with its unhurried progression through seasons, offers a different kind of wealth. The satisfaction of harvesting vegetables you planted months earlier, the patience required to split and stack wood for winter warmth, the humility of accepting that some problems cannot be solved quickly but only waited out until conditions change. These experiences cannot be monetized or measured on spreadsheets, yet they address hungers that urban convenience often exacerbates rather than satisfies. The hunger for meaning beyond consumption, for connection beyond transaction, for identity rooted in contribution rather than acquisition. The farmhouse's low price tag reflects not poverty of place but poverty of collective imagination. The failure to recognize that land offering room to breathe, to grow, to fail and begin again may represent the most valuable real estate available in an age of spiritual constriction.